So let's look a little bit deeper at the auditory versus visual thinkers. And you can go through this in more detail later on, but I just wanted to look at it very quickly and note that, again, the auditory or maybe left hemisphere learning style is going to be much more comfortable in a classroom setting where that information is going to be delivered in a more verbal or auditory format. Whereas the visual thinker, the visual learner, he may be feeling a little bored in the classroom. Things may be moving a little too slow for him because he may be living in this visual soup to whatever degree. And again, the further away from this center cross that you go, that balance of logic and kinesthetic and auditory and visual, the further away from center you go, the more likely you are to run into some challenges in one or more areas of your life. When you get out to the extreme, you can see that you may run into issues such as attention deficit disorder, ADHD. You may have auditory processing disorder or a sensory processing disorder. And again, these may vary, but you can see the further away from center you go, the more likely you are to maybe wind up struggling with some areas. So we've got these visual and auditory thinkers. We know the auditory folks do really well in the classroom. Let's look at the two kind of basic styles of reading. And the first style or approach to reading is going to be the auditory, phonetic reading style or reading approach. And we're all familiar with this. Probably 99% of us, this is the way we were taught to read. And we visually break the word into pieces, either letters or syllables or letter combination, and we sound out each piece. Hopefully we have some sense of recognition. We call this a synesthesia, a sense of knowing which sound corresponds to which letter or letter combination. And we loop around here several times depending upon the length of the word, and then ultimately we reassemble them inside our mind, and boom, we can read or spell the word. So that's your basic style of phonetic reading. That's how we're taught to read. We are taught to memorize a certain number of sight words to build up our vocabulary, and folks would argue that, that's a visual or whole word approach to reading. But the truth is, the basic formula for reading is to see the words, sound them out, and then extrapolate the meaning as we work our way through the sentence or the reading material. Now, a very different way to read, but one that's actually been around for years. This is not new. I didn't invent it. I can't take credit for this. Is reading visually, and that is recognize the word as it was memorized. Again, looking for that synesthesia, that sense of knowing or that feeling of recognition, and then simultaneously recalling both the sound of the word and the meaning of the word. This is a very different process, and it's not about phonics versus whole language. They're both part of the process, but they're kind of reordered. So rather than sounding out the word to get the meaning, we recognize the word and get the sound of the word. And obviously for that to occur, you have to have a full phonetic understanding of the word. But what we have found is that it is not necessary to memorize thousands and thousands of words. That's probably one of the biggest misconceptions that's out there, because once you've memorized probably 300 words, you've memorized, and this probably happens before you even get to the first grade or kindergarten, for most children, you've memorized all the phonetic combinations. You know all the sounds there are. So now, by the time you memorized visually 300 words or so, you've seen every phonetic combination there is. You've seen all the, most of the common syllables and virtually all the letter combinations that there are to know. And now, through the process of pattern recognition, not decoding, but with pattern recognition, you can see that bat is the same as, is very similar to hat, and bed is similar to bad, and your mind will work with that. It's really amazing, and again, this is not rocket science. This has been around for years, and it maybe just hasn't been applied to learning to read, or in such a way that can overcome the, let's call it the hype, or the dedication, if you will, to that phonics-based approach to reading, learning to read phonetically. Are there any other myths? Well, you know, I think the biggest myth of all is that there's one correct method for teaching students to read. There's 4 different learning styles, each one with its own strengths and weaknesses. The 2 that we're primarily dealing with today are visual and verbal, those 2 strengths. As far as phonics versus whole language or sight reading, research shows that children learn with a combination of both. So what we want to do here is take kind of the best of both worlds, and we're not going to favor whole language or sight reading versus phonics, but we're going to put the 2 together in a way that makes sense. And again, this program is not about fixing a specific reading problem that would be associated with, say, dyslexia or ADHD or something like that.